Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you for for being online on time. So again, welcome. My name is Ben Francia, and welcome to tonight's live Q&A session with Coach Don Velasco. So again, my name is Ben Francia. I'm a triathlete and a digital marketing coach at Francia Digital, and I'll be your moderator and host for tonight's Q&A session with Coach Don. Okay, so in this session, Q&A session for tonight, we'll learn a lot from Coach Don, especially about training in this time of pandemic, and most especially on how to make the most out of our time in this in this quarantine downtime. Okay, so guys, if you have any questions, just post them in the comment section. Do a shout out and pakilala kayo kung sino kayo nanonood dyan, and we'll give you a shout out later. Okay? Sige. So, I won't really spend a lot of time introducing this person or resource person for tonight, because in the triathlete or in the triathlon community, he is very well known and he doesn't really need any further introduction. But syempre, for the benefit of those people who are new to multisports, new to triathlon, and you don't know Coach Don yet, allow me to give him a brief introduction. Okay, so Coach Don is an Ironman certified coach. He is also a DNA Fit certified trainer, an ISSA fitness nutrition specialist, and also a precision fit bike fitter. Okay, so like what I said, I won't spend a lot of time doing introduction about Coach Don. Para later, I'll let him introduce himself, and then let him tell his story also. Okay, sige. So without further ado, guys, allow me to hand you to Coach Don Velasco. Yan, bro. Good evening. You're
Hey
live.
bro,
Okay, sige.
thanks for having me. Ang galing mo na mag-host ha. Parang within a span of 2 months, laki na
practice
naman.
practice lang yan eh. Parang ano lang yan eh. Parang triathlon lang yan eh.
Oo, exposure lang. Pwede
uh,
na tayo release na.
Toto. Hindi, tsaka pare hindi thanks for having me kasi this is you. Okay. Ano lang ako dito. Sabit lang ako dito. So, actually ako nakikinabang dito because I'll be learning a lot from you, and I'll have this privilege to ask you the questions firsthand. Okay. So, pare, kamusta? How things been during this quarantine
Well,
na
alam mo naman,
napahaba?
oo. Initially, we were thinking now this is just gonna be a month, naging 2 months. Now we're running up until, as of today, I think 5 months na no?
Yeah, going six
Think already.
months. Going 6 months.
Maybe 6 months na.
Oo.
So, 'di ba? Parang, a lot of things have been happening. Of course, not in our favor, most of things. But at the same time, this is what it is. And lagi kong sinasabi is that, we should try and make the most out of it. Because at the end of the day, lagi, whenever I talk to people nga, whenever I tell them, let's say, potential problems or whatever, lagi namin nababalikan, at least nandito tayo buhay, and we're living, we have a roof over our head, etc. So that's already something to be very thankful for.
Oo.
So yun nga, not even to begin with, the amount of races that have been canceled. Ano ba races mo dapat this year?
Okay, sige. um, I was supposed to, I siguro, I'll be honest, I was one of those people who were quite disappointed because of all of these cancellations, di ba? I was supposed to race for, Ironman Australia. And
Mm.
this is, kumbaga, alam mo naman kapag ka ganitong malayong karera, tapos it's a full distance, the kind of preparation na ginagawa talagang involve buong pamilya eh. Kasi, syempre,
Yes.
especially we'll be traveling with the whole family. It's also my first time to go to Australia kasi I have a lot of relatives there, and so yung planning hindi lang sa end of our kumbaga side of our family, yung mga relatives din namin in Australia are also kumbaga looking forward to it. So yun, syempre canceled race, canceled travel plans, It was supposed to be parang a birthday celebration and a graduation celebration for my daughter also. So, alam mo yun, hindi mo naman pwedeng um, ikainis, kasi ganun talaga eh, di ba?
Oo.
Wala kang magagawa, i-cancel talaga eh. So, sabi ko, paano na to? At first, sabi ko, 2 months, 3 months, off-season lang muna, kaso sobrang humaba. Medyo, medyo hirap din to really get back into training.
Yeah.
Oo. Kaya
Ang
very
hirap.
very excited ako for this for this session because I know most of my concerns as a triathlete na medyo natenga because of the pandemic masasagot in this session for tonight.
Yeah, that's why we're here. Actually, this is 'di ba nung pinag-usapan natin what we could talk about, this is really the first thing that came to mind kasi I know a lot of people are dealing with the same questions, same concerns, etc. So, for us to I guess begin, when you talk about how we got into triathlon, 'di ba the first thing that you know really we could talk about is why we did it. Ikaw ba, Ben, like for example, um, when you first got into triathlon, first of all, how did you learn about it and what made you sign up?
Uh, Peer pressure. Hindi. Well, hindi kasi in my case it was it was look for something na that would allow me to really focus on my health and general wellness. Kasi I started doing triathlons when I turned 40. Okay?
Mhm.
Sabi nga nila, ano daw yan eh, parang midlife crisis daw. So, wala akong pambili ng Ferrari, so nag-triathlon na lang ako. So, it was for me to parang effort ko to adapt a more healthy lifestyle. That was primarily my purpose for getting into triathlon.
So, actually, I guess we're two sides of a coin.
Mm-hmm.
Kasi ako, like ikaw, you got into triathlon because you wanted to be healthier. Ako kasi I got into triathlon not really early in my life kasi I started mga 22 na ako. But believe it or not, I got into triathlon because when I saw it on TV, sabi ko, grabe, full Ironman yun in Kona, the World Championships. Sabi ko na nakita ko, grabe, they're swimming that long, 3.8 kilometers, they're biking 180 kilometers, and they're running a marathon, which is of course 42 kilometers. Sabi ko, imposible yan. Di ko talaga, I couldn't wrap my head around it. Tapos at the same time, sabi ko, baliw yung gagawa niyan. As in, literal, those words came out of my mouth. Tapos after, sabi ko, inaaral ko, sabi ko, grabe, so kung kaya nila yan, paano kaya? And then when I started telling my relatives, my friends, ganun, reaction nila parang, ay, di mo kaya yan. Kasi, growing up, I was a nerd. I was a couch potato. Talaga yung tipong in high school, one mile run yata yun eh,
Uh-huh.
from the Ateneo High School gate. Oh, sorry, from the Ateneo High School to the gate. So, sabi nila 1 mile, yun. Believe it or not, nung, siguro tumakbo ako mga 200 meters. The rest nilakad ko. Tapos nung pabalik ako, halos magko-collapse na ako. Yung dry na yung bibig ko. Medyo nakakita na ako stars. Ganon. Ganon talaga. So, lahat na nakakakilala sa akin, I'm sure a lot of my old classmates and friends would attest to it na I was the last person they would think of who would join a triathlon. More so, do well at it, and probably more so to be a coach. Pero yun nga, so the thing that really challenged me, or the thing that brought me into triathlon was that it's so challenging, it felt so impossible. And at the same time, when now that everything is happening with the pandemic, the canceled races, ganon, parang I could really say that I've been through enough to be able to understand how to go through this the best possible way. I've had my share of cancellations sa races. Yung tipong nandun na ako sa venue na cancel like 1 or 2 days before, and that was a full Ironman. That was Bohol 226 before. So I've had my share of disappointments, but the thing that really I guess allowed me to flourish even more as an athlete was my mentality na just keep going, right? So got into triathlon not because it was easy, but exactly because it was hard. So everything that we're facing now, these are challenges. And I'm pretty sure a lot of the other, triathletes that are watching there, they probably have the same experience or mindset going into this na, okay, nag-triathlon ako dahil challenging siya. Okay? Or in your case, I got into triathlon because I wanted to be healthy. So lagi kong sinasabi nga na nothing worthwhile ever came easy. So when you talk about joining your first race, syempre hindi naman yan, tipong punta ka lang sa race, karera ka, that's it. You have to train for it, you have to prepare for it. And oftentimes, the preparation is harder than the race. So ganun rin yung nangyayari ngayon. Right? Everything that's happening, these are all part of being a triathlete and being a part of the healthy lifestyle. And this doesn't even just encompass triathletes lang. This encompasses all quote-unquote athletes. Kasi some people, they don't like to refer to themselves as athletes. Some are just fitness enthusiasts. Some just want to be healthy. But believe it or not, the mere fact that you're exerting some physical effort, you're already an athlete in some sense. So, this is really a part of it. We can't run away from it. If we turn our backs on the sport that we got into, bakit? Why are we doing it? Like, okay, walang karera, maraming cancel. We don't know specifically when we could race yet. But I always tell people that shouldn't stop you from continuing to train, because at the end of the day, triathlon, sports, fitness, this is a lifestyle. We shouldn't really be hindered by the lack of races or lack of events or the traditional type of events that we could join. And instead, we should focus on using this opportunity to stay healthy, stay fit, and enjoy ourselves. Right? So, yan, at the end of the day talaga, we should try and enjoy ourselves during this time and not really be pressured about when we need to race or when we can race rather. So all these things, they really have kumbaga we can put them to the side muna and focus on ourselves, what we could do currently.
All right. Good. Okay. So ang difficulty, I guess, is really how to stay motivated. Okay.
Exactly.
Oo, kasi parang nangyari, nawala yung mga karera. And ako, I must confess that the major motivation for me to train is really that race that you're looking forward to. That's why parang after my A race, talagang planning na talaga ako to register. Talagang swipe kagad the credit card, register na kagad ng next race for the following year, di ba? So ngayon, since walang karera, that's the biggest challenge that I'm having right now personally as a triathlete. I'm sure a lot of my fellow triathletes out there are experiencing the same. So, siguro Don, baka you can give us some inputs on how to really train during this quarantine downtime, especially walang karera, 'di ba? Like,
Yeah.
meron bang structure, meron bang program na dapat sinusunod? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, like tulad ng sinasabi ko, the main hindrance right now is all about motivation and mindset. So for you to be able to address that, there are a few things that you could, I guess, take into account. All right? So ako, 'di ba, the title or the main headline of this live stream is talking about this particular phase of our athlete's career as a pre-season rather than an off-season. So why don't I want to use the term off-season? Let's start with that. Kasi when you talk about off-season, may implication na there's a certain load or burden that you're relieving yourself from. Okay? So, what do I mean? Diba after a huge build-up for a race, lahat ng mag-isabi, off-season na after this off-season. So, that's the thing. It's getting some rest. But the thing is, the term off-season implies na you're not doing anything. All right? So it's either you're training or you're not training, which is the off season, which isn't really the case when you have an off season, diba? When you have an off season, most you probably still swim a little, still bike a little, still try and get some fitness in. So instead of using the off season term, what I really prefer to use, this is just me ha, pero this is what I really like to use, is the term pre-season. Why? Kasi you have to look at it in terms of in a longer timeline. Ako, kunyari, after my big race, which is usually Cebu, talaga I prepare all my sessions really build up towards Cebu. Tapos nun ay talagang binubuga ko lahat sa race na yon. After, syempre, pagod na pagod ako. So I take a rest. But believe it or not, that break or that rest period is still what I call pre-season. Why? Kasi the 1 or 2 weeks that I take off, the reason why I do that is because I want to recover so that I can start training again properly. It might not be very soon, but still my goal is the next season ahead. So pre-season. So even if you're talking about resting, you could still refer to it as pre-season. Rest is, they have this unbalanced year, I would say. So, may certain months na sobrang dami ng training, may certain months na walang training. So, that's the problem. Kaya tayo nagkakaroon ng, urge or desire to go off season after a big race. It's because probably overloaded tayo with our preparation for our A race. Tapos when we feel like we need to take a break and the 2 weeks become 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, etc. The reason being, it's not sustainable. Okay? So, I like to refer to parang for us to improve how we can train and how we can manage this pre-season. Again, the reason why I'm calling this pre-season is even if wala tayong karera in the near future, by the end of the year, wala pa, early next year, di pa tayo sure. Pero, you could already use this time to prepare. So, let me give you a few tips or a few, I guess, notes that we could discuss when it comes to preparing during this time. So making the use of this quarantine downtime. All right. So the first one, I do this for my athletes. Some willingly, some not too willing, but I really have to drop volume. So when you talk about dropping volume, so your usual long ride, believe it or not, 1 or 1.5 hours na lang. A regular session will be maybe an hour or less. So these are just typical numbers that a lot of people can utilize. Even ako, ganyan rin lang ako, mga 30 minutes to 1 hour every day. I don't even have long rides or long runs anymore. So why am I doing this? It's because I find it to be more sustainable over a long period of time, right? If we always focus on volume, getting more done, more is better, dyan yung may risk ng overtraining and hence wanting to take a huge break because we're just, we're just overwhelmed with all the commitments that we have. They have to work, we have family work, etc. So tulad nga ng sinabi mo kanina, di ba, when we talk about planning a race, it's the whole family is involved. So the mere fact that you have to train, kasama dyan ang pamilya. I have to tell my wife, oh, this is my schedule. I'll be biking for this long on this day, etc. And, I could say Jana is really thankful kasi ako, I don't put an emphasis on volume. I put an emphasis on really getting the proper work done. So, yun, so drop volume. And the nice thing about dropping volume is that, and aside from dropping volume, training during this time is that you can avoid cramming. So for example, what if I don't train during this time? I take a break. Wala akong gawin halos. Or maybe a few runs lang, a few unstructured workouts, etc. Pagdating ng season, maghahabol ako.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Once I know when the race
Correct.
is, I'll have to start cramming. And when you take a long break, ako nga lang 2-week break, ramdam ko eh. And there are a lot of, actually, if you look at YouTube ngayon sa mga GTN and GCN, like training, usually the common duration is 2 weeks. If you go beyond that, pahirap na
Okay.
makarecover. So what more, 2 months, 3 months, even up to 6 months until the end of the year. So hindi ka lang back to zero. Probably negative
Mm-mm.
ka, right? So think of this time as parang preparing your body to start training or ramping up the volume again for next year. So some would call it maintenance, but ako kasi I don't like the term maintenance kasi it assumes na you're just static, you're not improving, but you could still use this time to lay down the foundation to improve. So the nice thing about training less, but training consistently throughout the year or across several years, is that you need less volume, thereby making it more sustainable. So your volume is spread across a wide base rather than a few months na nagka-cram ka. So that's what I find to be more sustainable for me. So you're a dad and ako I'm a new dad. Like Isaac is just 1 year old. I'm really enjoying the time I spend with him. Talagang ako pag nagte-train ako, iniisip ko lang gusto ko na bumalik
Mhm.
kasi nami-miss ko na anak ko, nami-miss ko na asawa ko, ganun. So all these things talaga, parang they play a role in how I
Aha.
train and how I structure my program. And even my athletes program, like I know yung mga family man or yung mga busy, ganun. I try and talk to them about, okay, I try and limit, okay, ganito lang gawin mo. That's all you need, believe me. Ganun. And trust the process, lagi ko sinasabi.
Don,
Okay.
question. So you mentioned the first step is to drop the volume. Hindi maging
Mm.
gigil sa mileage, sa volume, but rather focus on the volume, di ba? To maintain a certain kumbaga intensity and volume also. So when you say lower down the volume, like how low? Yeah, is there parang a recommended time, recommended distance, the recommended mileage, o depende rin yan sa tao, depende dun sa race that you'll be preparing for after this pandemic?
Usually, I would say na it depends on the person talaga. And of course, depends on the race that preparing for. But because races are just so far off now,
Uh-huh.
a general rule of thumb that I like to do for my athletes is try and train as much as you can every day. It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be long. Pero stay active every day. It can be like your easy day can be an easy spin, stretching, yoga, etc. And yung for cardio naman, I guess yung lagi ko sinasabi, the shortest is 30 minutes. Why? Kasi probably, especially without a warm-up, first 15, nag-warm up pa lang body mo. The next 10 to 15, doon mo pa lang nire-reap yung benefits. And then, syempre, may cool down pa yan,
Uh-huh.
etc. Now, yun, so 30 minutes to 1 hour, I'd say that's a sweet spot in terms of being able to train. You can bump it up to 1.5 hours
Okay.
or maybe up until a maximum of 2.
Okay.
But right now, I don't really see any value going beyond that.
Okay.
Unless na lang, let's say, yun nga, it's a group ride, just want to have fun, then all well and good. But in terms of talking about yung pinaka konti that you should be able to get away with, I'd say 30 minutes to 1 hour is the bare
Okay.
minimum.
Okay. Yeah, and it seems like yung consistency is key also, no?
Yes. Ako, I've been in the sport, I've been in triathlon for I think more than 10 years already. I started around
Mhm.
2009. Actually, mga late 2008, I wanted to go into triathlon. Or hindi, mid 2008 pala. I wanted to go into triathlon, pero natakot ako eh. Kasi wala pa masyadong coaches during that time. Um, wala pang YouTube videos
Aha.
about how to train for triathlon. Wala pa masyadong
Aha.
articles. There were a lot of conflicting advice from the people that I knew. So medyo natakot ako. Pero the thing that I really learned, I got into the volume trap early in my career. Like I train maybe 20 hours a week. Single ako nun eh,
Mhm.
fresh grad, wala akong commitment. I was living with my
Aha.
parents, wala akong girlfriend. Ano yun, talagang by design yun, hindi ako nagkaka-love life kasi sabi ko, hindi, focus ako on being triathlete, yun. Pero as I matured, as I grew older, na-realize ko you need to balance life with triathlon. So slowly, nag-start ako mag-shave off ng volume. And believe it or not, when I started to shave off volume, dun pa ako bumilis. Kasi hindi na ako pagod for my workouts. Hindi na ako stressed about missing a long ride dahil umuulan, or hindi ko nagawa yung long run kasi may party or may family event or etc. So it allowed me to get some sanity in my routine. And across the 10 years that I've been training, hindi ako nag-off-season ng off-season talaga. Like, siguro pinaka-off-season ko na when Jana and I went to the States last year. We went there for, I think, 3 or 4 weeks. But I still ran. I still went to the gym. I still did the workouts that I knew were important. Alright? Pagbalik ko, it took me maybe 3 weeks to get back into shape, to get back into fitness. So not really bad. Okay? So I kept racing throughout the 10 years that I've been a triathlete, not taking a year off, not taking a break. Why? Because it was a lifestyle for me. I knew when to rest. I knew when to lower my volume. I knew how long to rest, which is yung nga, parang just a short while. Kasi alam mo naman, pag nagpahinga ka, ang hirap bumalik. Yun yung pinakamahirap. Parang pag sanay ka na sa routine, tinigil mo, nasanay ka na doon sa wala kang ginagawa, ang hirap bumalik. So yun talaga yung main hindrance for a lot of people. And then finally, I guess as I parang when I looked at my training program kasi across several years, pakonti ng pakonti, not just because I was forced to, but because I was wanted to. Na-realize ko, oy, hindi ko na kailangan to. Hindi ko na kailangan mag-long ride during this time of the year. Hindi ko na kailangan gawin tong, interval work for this time of the year. I knew when to do it. And of course, nga, that's the wisdom that I give my athletes then. Like the 10 years worth of experience for me to come from let's say a couch potato to an podium finisher. Yun yung gusto ko matutunan nila, na don't be a slave to your volume.
Okay. Oo. Talking about your your students and your athletes, a lot of them have been posting na in the live stream. Shout out lang muna natin to mga to, sila Kath, Emil, Junix, Maybell, Benedict, Kath, Glenn, Kenneth, Louie. Okay, ang dami mo fans. Bagay daw sa'yo long hair, bro.
Sabi ko nga next year magpo-ponytail na ako pag may karera.
Sino bang long hair na na triathlete? Parang bihira no? Palaging short hair eh.
Mahirap pagtuyo ng buhok.
Oo nga pag galing sa galing sa tubig. So, tama ka dun sa sinabi mo na na parang if it's already a lifestyle, parang lumalabas there isn't really such a thing as off season. Parang there's no such thing as a break. Diba? Parang even that break in between major races is part of the lifestyle kasi that's your time to allow yourself to rest and recover in preparation for the next race. Diba? Parang ngayon one role that you have right now, since you're a new family man, is a father, diba? Sa dad, diba? Hindi naman pwede sabihin mo off season muna ako na daddy ako, diba? Hindi naman ganoon, diba? That's already part of you eh. Right? So it's the same thing. If you are a triathlete and you embrace this as a lifestyle, that break is kumbaga is hindi yun nung break from training, break from everything else, di ba? You still train to maintain and to prepare for the next season. So pre-season rather than off-season.
Lagi ko rin sinasabi, the mere fact that we're still able to train is a huge blessing. Marami akong kilala, gusto nila mag-train pero hindi sila makatrain, either injured, wala talagang space sa condo, etc. So, let's be thankful for what we have. And lagi kong sinasabi rin, even my wife, we got a treadmill. Tagal niya akong kinukulit to get a treadmill. Tapos when we finally got one for the condo, sobrang na-appreciate niya. She feels a lot better. Talagang after her 30-minute or 40-minute cardio session, mas maganda mood niya. At the same time, lagi nga niya sinasabi, parang parang I feel a lot healthier. So all these things, it's not just about performance, it's also about feeling good, diba? Feeling healthy. So, yon. Siguro another thing that we could talk about what we should be doing during this quarantine downtime is to reassess the sessions that we're
Mm-hmm.
doing. I touched upon this a little bit kanina. So the thing is we need to be more efficient with what we're doing. Now that we've dropped volume and um we haven't been running or biking as long as we were before, we need to make sure that our sessions are still of good quality. Right? So when I say of good quality, it doesn't mean na dapat pagod ka at the end. Just because you're not wiped out during a training session, that doesn't mean it's not effective. Believe me, a lot of, I'd say, veteran or seasoned athletes would say na you don't need to be tired. What you need to do is to be consistent. The more consistent you are, the more gains you will get. All right. So part of being consistent is making sure that you have a routine that is sustainable. So hindi ka papakamatay sa volume, hindi ka papakamatay sa intensity. It's a sweet mix. So being efficient, when you talk about it, you could think of it as not just in terms of volume and intensity, but also in terms of the sessions that you do. Diba? Parang, ako kasi I like to think of this time or think of training time as a return on investment, or in terms of return on investment rather. When you do a particular session, what are you getting out of it? Am I addressing the weaknesses that I have, or am I doing it just because I enjoy it? If you enjoy it, okay lang yan, no problem with that. But if you really want to improve, maganda if you use this time to really assess, ito ba yung nagpapa like ito ba yung dahilan kung bakit hindi ako nagpo-podium, hindi ko nakukuha yung PR ko, hindi ko na break yung certain record that I've been um, aiming for, etc. Now, if we think of that mindset, usually the things that come into mind would be, for example, if you're a runner, ako dati, I started as a runner. I hated the bike kasi natatakot ako sumemplang. I find it boring, masakit sa katawan, etc. But I knew that's what I needed to improve or to, at least land on the podium. So, I biked more. So, naging strength ko yung bike ko. The next is, okay, swim naman. Swim, hirap na hirap ako sa swim kasi I only learned how to swim maybe I was 22 na. So when I learned how to swim, I wanted to improve at it. And yun yung next step why I got into how I became a consistent podium finisher kasi napabilis ko na yung swim ko. So if I kept doing what I'm used to and kept doing what I wanted rather than what I needed to, then hindi ako abot sa point na yun that I'm constantly improving. Right? So, part of being efficient, don't focus too much on volume without a reason. Address your weaknesses, and at the same time be honest with yourself. Do you really need to sometimes I thought this is where I guess we need advice from other people or other coaches or other, I guess, our friends that could give us some quality advice. Don't be a slave to what you think you should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
So we need an honest assessment from a third party or someone, kasi may ma-pride tayo as athletes parang okay, kailangan ko mag-bike, kailangan ko mag-run ng ganito kahaba. Bakit? Kasi yan yung race distance. O bakit mo kailangan gawin yung race distance at this point in time? Para safe. Usually yun yung nangyayari, diba? So,
Kailangan feedback.
sometimes it's a leap of faith. Oo. And ako, my athletes know this siguro. It's easy to design a high volume program.
Mm-hmm.
Dali lang yan. But the hard part, and it really takes a lot of confidence and a lot of trust from both parties, is to be able to design a program that's low volume, efficient, and does the work that at the end of the day when you race, it will work. So yun, part of the time that we should be doing now is of course to still have a plan. So we talked about diba, parang a little bit of unstructured work. There's no really harm in that.
Mm-hmm.
But it shouldn't be the norm.
Okay.
Kasi when you talk about it being the norm, lahat ng workout natin unstructured. So yung problema dyan, yun nga, you won't address your weaknesses. A lot of times, it will lead to injury. early in my career then, nagka-problem rin ako dyan kasi, again, I was a runner, I enjoyed running. Takbo lang ako ng takbo. Until hindi ko na malayan, nagkaka-plantar fasciitis na ako, nagkaka-calf strain na ako, pero dahil ma-pride ako, hindi ko ma-let go na kailangan ko magpahinga. So remember, having some rest is still a part of a plan, right? So rest and recovery. Yun. Ikaw Ben, let me ask you. Before we started training, would you say you have a strength routine
um,
or something that
well,
you do?
when I was when I was training for a full distance Ironman, um, I made it a point na meron talaga akong strength and conditioning. The first Ironman race ko was Ironman Philippines. Ayun talaga, walang strength training talaga yun. Halos structured training pero a lot of volume. I felt na parang wala na akong oras to squeeze in strength and conditioning eh. Pero when I did my second Ironman race, ng Kawi, ano, sabi ko this time I'll make it a point that I'll incorporate strength and conditioning. Pero ngayon, wala, as in zero strength and conditioning. O nga parang medyo yung sinasabi mo work on your weaknesses. I could have like used that past couple of weeks or months even
Oh,
to 'di ba to focus on strength and conditioning since wala hindi ka makapag-ride out, hindi ka makatakbo sa labas.
yeah.
Nakakaumay din naman ang indoor spinning and treadmill, 'di ba? Might as well use that time for strength and conditioning. Kaso yun nga, hindi. Ngayon lang eh. Ngayon lang ako natatauhan eh.
Yeah. So that's another point that I want to stress, no? If you want to make the most out of this time, another thing that you should focus on is strength and conditioning. So lifting weights, if you have weights, pero actually sa totoo lang kahit body weight is already pretty good. So the rationale behind it, why? Why do we need to lift? Why do we need to do strength and conditioning? Lagi kong sinasabi rin is that it's not a substitute for cardio, but it's a supplement. So when I say supplement, it's important because it can help prevent injuries, and at the same time it can help you improve your performance later on. Like you see these Tour de France cyclists, if you look at their off-season program, nagsasquats yan ng sobrang bigat, as in yung mga 1 rep max or 4 reps ganun. So isipin mo bakit nila kailangan gawin yun, endurance athlete sila, hindi naman sila sprinter or what. Kasi nga may role yan, may purpose ang proper strength and conditioning. And remember, it's not the same as bodybuilding. Ah. When you go to the gym as a triathlete, as an athlete, as a OCR athlete or as a runner, don't lift there with a bodybuilder's training program. Yes, you could probably the workouts will be similar kasi fundamentals yan eh, movement, the squat, the lunge, etc. So a lot of bodybuilders do that for huge gains, like getting bigger, etc. But your mindset as an endurance athlete will be to go there, address imbalances and weaknesses, and strengthen the muscles that you use for running, cycling, swimming. But more importantly, to do the movements that are the most similar to the three sports that we have. You know, like for example, if you're gonna do strength training, um, and you want to improve your cycling ability and help prevent certain injuries, the best workout I found would be the rear lunge and the step up. So step up yung ako bench yung ginagamit ko. I put 1 foot over and drive my body up. Tapos yung rear lunge yung palikod na lunge, obviously. Diba? Parang how best to describe it. Basta you put 1 foot back and then you do a lunge. So those movements I found will be the most similar to the running and cycling movements. And mas madali i-transition. Kasi your goal doing strengthening is to make your muscles stronger and to some extent adapt them to the movements that you will be doing. So from something more general, you want to transition to something more specific. So I see a lot of people do heavy gear work or do a lot of hill work. So when you ask them why, it's because that's their strength routine. It can help you get stronger, but I wouldn't really call it a strength routine in itself. Kasi when you talk about strength, diba, ilang reps gagawin mo pag strength? But marami ng 15 reps, diba? When you do a heavy gear workout sa bike, syempre hindi naman yung 15 reps lang, diba? When you count it over the course of even 2 minutes, ang daming reps nun. So it's still not, oo. So, di ba, pakit ng Shera. Gusto ko pala kasi yung legs ko. Nakita ko ng Shera. Pero you think about the distance that you have to cover and the time that it takes, it's still not a strength program by itself. I'm not saying it's not gonna be effective. Yes, it can be effective, but it's all about having a gradual build up eh. Like start with strength sa gym and transition from gym strength to something more specific, which is cycling strength. And eventually, something even more specific, which is triathlon strength. Siyempre, kasi when you talk about triathlon strength, that's still gonna be different from cycling strength. Why? Wala naman tayong karerang going up Sierra Madre. So most of the time, the torque that you want to generate would be in the aero position, which is a more specialized version of putting out torque in a more relaxed position, di ba? So may transition tayong gradual na ginagawa. So, aside from that, the main reason why I do strength work is because I want to avoid injuries. Like what I said, I've been racing for 10 years. The only 2 seasons where I got injured were the times where I really neglected strengthening. Talagang parang sabi ko, hindi ko na kailangan mag-strength kasi gusto ko dagdagan yung volume ko. So doon ako na-injure. ITB, calf injury, etc. Now, why do these injuries happen? Usually overuse, and overuse is not just because you have too much volume, but it's also a sign that you have an imbalance, right? So very common injury ng triathletes will be ITB, and believe it or not, it's very easy to address that if you do the work before you do the volume. You do the strength work before you do the volume. So, working on your glutes, working on your quads, your VMO, all these things, they are overworked when we have a lot of volume. But if you prepare them before you include volume, it's gonna help you in terms of longevity. So another thing that we should focus on during this time is proper strengthening. Now, syempre sarado mga gym, di ba? Does that mean hindi na ako makaka-strengthening? Hindi, kasi if you're someone, even ako I don't really need a lot of weight to be able to make the most out of my strength program. Body weight nang okay na. Or very light dumbbells, up until 15 pounds, mabigat na yon actually. I don't see anyone needing heavy weights if their main goal is just to use it as a springboard to improve their triathlon skill. So of course, if you have access to heavy weights at kaya mo, then that's even better. But I wouldn't say it's needed for maybe 80 to 90% of the triathletes out there. Yun. For me, I just do it once or twice a week. Upper body, I do it twice just because I don't get to swim. Lower body, once, kasi yun nga, going back to um, the volume program, mahirap kasi isingit, bugbog na yung legs mo sa bike and run, bubugbugin mo pa sa weights, di ba? So which is also the main hindrance why a lot of triathletes neglect strength and conditioning or strength training during the course of the season. Kasi not only are you trying to make up for the volume that you need to be doing, parang pagod na yung legs mo tapos mag-weights ka pa, after mo mag-weights ang hirap mag-bike, ang hirap tumakbo, 'di ba? Mabigat yung legs, etc. So that's parang enough reason for a lot of people to neglect it or remove it from the program altogether. But tulad ng sinabi ko, during this time, drop volume. So the mere fact that you're dropping volume opens up a lot more time for strengthening. At hindi ka pagod sa from bike and from running
Uh-huh.
na hindi mo na nagagawa ng maayos yung
Uh-huh.
strengthening and vice versa. So if you, kunwari, masakit legs ko, hindi ako maka-bike, hindi malaking impact sa akin kasi again, the volume that I'm doing is really low. So I could skip that day and maybe move it to another day na hindi masyado affected yung training program ko as opposed to being forced to do all these long workouts and still include strengthening. Na pag may na-miss ako isang cardio session, ramdam mo yung malaking chunk yung nawawala, kumbaga.
Okay.
Yun.
Tapos in terms of let's say scheduling, saan maganda isingit ang ang strength and conditioning na session?
A lot of people that I've encountered will do it after a bike or after a run. Pero sa totoo lang, that's not the best way of doing it. Kung wala na talaga ang option, then I guess it's better than nothing. Pero the reason why I don't really like doing it after a bike or a run, kasi pagod ka na eh.
Mhm.
Pagod na yung muscle mo, tapos nun, you're expecting it to contract at a high force or a high
Uh-huh.
repetition. So it can potentially lead to more injury. So I like to schedule it preferably the day after a bike or a
Okay.
run. So it's a session in itself for the entire day.
Fresh legs, kumbaga.
Hindi, sa totoo lang, mahirap kasi i-define yung fresh legs eh. Pero hindi yung tipong,
Or
hindi yung pagod na
first
legs.
session.
Yung,
First training
yeah,
session.
first session. O, tapos siguro sa hapon, if you're gonna add something, maybe an easy bike na
Okay.
lang. Easy run kasi tricky kasi ang run kahit easy, malakas yung mabigat
Aha,
eh sa
aha.
legs. So, so ako, I like just easy spin. Just to, yung parang, sabi nila, flush out the
Okay,
legs, di ba?
okay.
So that's very
All
useful.
right. Good. So that's strength. Okay. Good.
Mm.
Sige. Um ako I have a question actually regarding regarding mga VR races. Okay. So what's your take on on mga virtual trainings, virtual races especially?
Well, we're lucky to have it, sa
Uh-huh.
totoo lang. Kasi, looking back, if this happened to us, maybe 5 years ago, wala pang Zwift, wala pang smart trainer, siguro ang dami na nabaliw ngayon. But the mere fact that we have these events, we can use it to our advantage, right? So, it's all about framing how we're supposed to do it. Kasi, if you keep racing, like virtual races, Ironman VR, they happen every weekend. A common, I guess, trap that happens is if you keep racing each event, parang 100%, and you don't know when to hold back, you don't know when to, let's say, skip a session, etc. So that's a problem kasi para kang candle niyan, maubos ka. Like, after a month or 2 months, ngayon, nasa ilang months na tayo, di ba? Parang nawawalan ng gana kasi you can't race every
Mhm.
weekend. In a regular season nga, ideally you have one A race, a couple of B races, and all the rest are just training races or C races, right? So we should treat these virtual races as training sessions rather than as races in
Okay.
themselves. Right? So, syempre, you could have, like, kunwari, may isang race, o gusto mo talaga maganda yung performance mo dito, no problem. You could race that, but you just don't do it every single weekend. Now, apart from virtual races, to stay motivated, what you could also do is have a particular goal. Um, a good example, one of my athletes, si Ronnie Flores, she posted recently she finally accomplished 57 minutes for a 10K. And believe it or not, her time before was 1 hour 23 minutes. That was just last year yata. So, laking jump. Pero that was our goal going into this particular phase of training. It was just to nail 10K in under an hour. And hindi, yung program niya wasn't really like intervals or, syempre may intervals, pero Hindi tad-tad ng intervals. Hindi siya tipong, o dapat ito yung peak performance mo. No, we wanted her 10K to become sustainable. So even if she runs a 10K every weekend, consistent na sub 1 hour. So that's better than having like a peak, tapos ang biglang kailangan mo na magpahinga ng off-season kasi na-burnout ka from the program. So it's all about sustainability. So remember, the goal during this time is to treat your current performance as something that's norm. Or parang kunwari, we're preparing our body to become stronger and faster during this time such that it becomes the norm when we start training next year. Yung easy run mo ngayon, probably compared to last year, will be something like a race pace effort na. So it's all about having that particular mindset na tuloy-tuloy yung improvement mo such that the foundation becomes wider and taller, and then yung easy runs mo, yung consistent runs mo or your zone 2 runs compared to before will be a lot faster by this time. Now, yung when you talk about virtual races kasi 'di ba, it's all about having fun. Yeah. Kasi wala naman podium awards dyan eh. Like you don't really get, walang pinapadalang medal. Well, you can buy actually sa Ironman virtual reality, like finisher's medal. Pero pag nag-podium ka, hindi ka papadala ng medal, hindi ka papadala ng gift certificate. So, bakit ka nag-race? Pwede mo sabihin bragging rights, so okay lang
Bragging
naman
rights
yan.
sa leaderboard,
Pero,
no? Nakapublish kasi ko.
leaderboard.
Nakapublish eh.
Pero, I mean, if that's the motivation, okay lang yan, walang problema. I've been down the same path. Nag-race ako kasi gusto ko talaga mag-podium, syempre. Pero at the same time, a lot of athletes race Ironman VR or, all these virtual challenges just because it's a lot more fun than just running without a goal.
Mhm.
Yeah. Running without a particular target in mind. So remember, just have fun with all these events, and that will already help a lot with motivation. Don't be too hard on yourself. Hindi ka naka-podium, hindi ka naka-PR, okay lang yan. But the important thing is that you're getting up every day and you're doing the work. Now, aside from that, syempre fun maka-finish ng isang race na virtual. Pero what's even more fun is when you think about the long-term effects of it. Like, sabi ko nga, delayed gratification. You're sacrificing now, tapos alam mo yung sobrang sarap when you start racing again, when you start training again, at nakita mo yung benefits ng ginagawa mo ngayon. That you didn't let yourself go. Siyempre, dahil bumalik, nakita mo. Parang, siguro, quick example. Siguro when I got married, yun yung longest off season that after our wedding ceremony. Hirap na hirap ako kasi yun yung longest off season ko na, which is around 3 weeks during that time yata. Sa Maldives kami, so wala halos gym. So nagre-relax ka lang the whole time. When I got back, sobrang baba ng watts ko. As in, maybe 20-30% lower than what I was usually doing. Now, so ayoko na mangyari yun. So what I did was ever since then, I kept maintaining my performance such that my easy effort is still already pretty fast. So syempre, it's easier said than done. You really have to pay attention to what you're doing. But now, my goal is to even improve that. Like, for example, ako dati at my zone 2, medyo hirap na ako, let's say, kunwari, 170 watts. Pero right now, I could already hold maybe 190 at still at zone 2. So what does that mean for me when I start training? I'm holding that wattage, which was before my interval work already. That means even if I hold an easy effort, I'm still gonna be a lot faster than what I was before. So yun yung delayed gratification for me. Misip ko na lang parang, lahat ng ginagawa ko ngayon, later on, I'm gonna reap the benefits from it.
Yeah, so you mentioned na yung virtual races, itong mga Ironman VR, it's a way for us to really have fun and to enjoy the racing experience virtually. Siguro ang isang opportunity rin doon for us to have fun is to do it with friends. to do, 'di ba? Mga
Yes.
teammates natin na hindi natin nakikita. We don't
Oh.
have the chance to train anymore. Kasi marami sa atin na ano yung mas motivated to train and to race if you do it with with friends, okay?
Exactly.
So, yeah, so there's a question here Coach Don, siguro in relation to to VR. Well, not
Mm-hmm.
just VR races but VR training in particular. So this question is from Glenn Raimundo. Okay, so hi
Yeah.
Don, what indoor bike would you reco for first time in spinning? So he's asking for an indoor bike, not really an indoor trainer. So knows how to bike, licensed free driver and swimmer. Okay, that's his background. Also, around how much would it cost? So what are your recommendations on that?
When you talk about spin bike kasi, syempre hindi ito yung bike that you could use out. I'm not too familiar with with the gym models that we do have, but what I am familiar am with is meron kasi alam mo yung 'di ba the treadmill that I use now yung Ovix. Meron rin siyang spin bike actually. So I think if I'm not mistaken, it's around mid 20K range. So that's already pretty nice kasi um, not only is it kasi when you talk about the difference between an actual bike and a spin bike, the nice thing about having a spin bike is that it can fit multiple sizes. Like sa height ko or someone taller or someone smaller, ganun, it can be used by different people. So if you have multiple people
Mm-hmm.
in the house that want to use the same bike, then it's a nice option. So the problem with most spin bikes is that you can't use it with Zwift. For most, I have yet to see a spin bike that works with Zwift unless you use a power-based pedal or a pedal-based power meter rather. So if you use that, then you could use it
Mm-hmm.
with Zwift, diba? Now, I guess that's the parang easiest entry point if you want to get into spinning is to buy a spin bike like that, like the 20K range, etc. But eventually, if your goal is to go into triathlon and ikaw lang naman yung gagamit ng bike, then it's best to invest na on a cheap road bike. It doesn't have to be expensive. Yung ako nga dati, believe it or not, I did my first half Ironman with a bike that's 30K
Mm-hmm.
worth. So GT pa, di ba GT mountain bike? May road bike sila, believe it or not. Tapos ang group set ko nun 8 speed. Yung nakakatawa dyan, sorry, medyo na off
Okay
topic
lang,
tayo.
okay lang.
Pero nakakatawa dyan, I was racking my bike. Sa Camsur pa to nun eh. I was racking, the day before, di ba, you rack
Aha.
your bike. So the day before, Iron Kids. I was pushing my bike, rack ko siya. So isang Iron Kid tumuro sa akin. Okay. Uy, pareho kayo ng bike ah. So, so sa ako parang, teka, mag-half Ironman ako ah. Kasi ito mga Iron Kids, probably mas maganda pa
Oh,
yung bike sa
buti
akin.
hindi
Pero
sinabi sa
it
na
allowed me to finish the
buti
race.
hindi sinabi sa Don, Totoy, doon ang rack ng Iron Kids.
Munti ka na. Actually, feeling ko nga ano, sa totoo lang parang, actually yung bike nga na yon sobrang bigat pa sa loob nun na magagastos ako ng ganong kalaki. Parang, ito yung pinaka-entry level nun. Cleats ko pa nun, mountain bike cleats, kasi hindi ako marunong ng road bike cleats kasi mas mahirap siya
Aha,
i-clip
aha.
on, di ba? Or clip in. So, yun. But it allowed me to finish a half Ironman. And I did my half Ironman na-flat pa ako nun eh. Kasi hindi ako marunong magpalit. So, may support pa na yung Ironman support talaga na umiikot. So, siya pa yung nagpalit ng tube ko na. So, after that, I learned. Kailangan mo talaga matuto. Pero I finished it in 6 hours, 6 hours
Mhm,
20 for my first half Ironman with a dirt cheap bike, I would
mhm,
say, by triathlete
aha.
standards, diba? So you don't really have to spend a lot. So dalawa lang yan eh. If you really want a bike that you could use um, na mura just because you want to get into spinning, then the spin bike is okay. But eventually, if you do want to get into triathlon, maganda mag-invest ka na sa road bike that you could use
Okay,
outdoors.
okay.
Kasi no amount of spin bike training will prepare you for what you will encounter outdoors.
All right.
Yun. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
So, Don, siguro baka magandang topic that we can talk about for next week kasi it looks like this is going to be like a weekly weekly kwentuhan na over ano no over Facebook. So baka we can talk about next week about um setting up your indoor training I don't know training setup.
Pain
Pain
cave.
cave. Okay. Di ba?
Yeah.
What do you think?
So
Baka this is a good
yeah,
topic that we can talk about
definitely.
next week.
Actually, that's a very relevant topic now kasi first of all, it's you could bike out no problem. Pero for me kasi personally, I don't like to ride out as much as I can kasi for one I have like a baby nga, my parents are seniors, etc. So I want to be able to stay at home as much as I
Mm-hmm.
can. So 'di ba nga the reason why we're in quarantine right now is because we want to limit um, the spread of
Yep.
the
Yep.
virus. And for us to be able to do that, you know, spend as much time as you can indoors. So putting a huge emphasis on being able to train indoors, whether you're in a condo or you're lucky enough to have a house with a larger area, then it's important to make sure that you have the right equipment available to
Okay.
you. And it doesn't be, siguro what we could talk about is, kasi when you talk about indoor training, bike trainer, a lot of people already think it's like an expensive smart trainer when it doesn't have to be
Yep.
the
Yep.
case. Ako, for the longest time, I was training using not really a cheap, pero a fluid trainer,
Mm-hmm.
like moderately
Mm-hmm.
priced fluid trainer before I went into smart
Mm-hmm.
training, smart trainers rather. So siguro what we could do is next week we could talk about different types of indoor
Okay.
setups,
Okay. Sige. Interesting
different
yan.
diba? Different price brackets or different catering to different types of athletes, not just triathletes but I guess athletes,
Yep.
pwede natin
Yep. Yep.
pag-usapan yon.
Sige. Gusto ko yan. Gusto ko yan. Very interesting. Sige. Okay. Alam mo, hindi ko gaano napansin. So, ano na pala, no? Past 7 o'clock na pala. Okay. So, dami nating na-discuss eh. And we've covered a lot. So just to summarize all those things that you know no, that you mentioned, your recommendations. So drop the volume, be efficient by focusing on your weaknesses, have a plan, okay? Um, focus on your focus on on strength and conditioning, and lastly enjoy. So enjoy using virtual technologies like mga VR races and VR.
Sa Netflix.
Oo, Netflix. Exactly. Okay.
Oo.
Buti nga, ang dami ng ano
Bro,
ngayon, ano?
tapos ka
Ang
ni
dami
Umbrella
ng
Academy kakabike.
technology ngayon. Anyways. Sige, bro. I don't wanna keep you longer. I know, baka nagagalit na yung anak mo, tinatawag ka na. Magtimpla ka na daw ng gatas. Sige. Any final words to our um, viewers and invite them siguro to our next session next week.
Well, siguro one piece of, I wouldn't call it advice pero just to share with you guys, we're all having trouble right now with everything that's happening. Whether it be work, uh, our mental health, our physical health, of course, our frustrations with racing. Parang when you talk about the big picture, the last thing that you would really worry about are the races, diba? But believe it or not, being fit, being healthy, and exercising as much as you can every day. Not as much as you can, literally. Pero try and exercising every day. It will already play a huge role in terms of our wellness, our well-being. If you're anxious and stressed, I'm also going through the same thing. But lagi kong binabalik-balikan aside from, let's say, prayer, meditation, etc., is exercise because it helps your mood a whole lot. And trust me, sooner than we think, things will already become better. We're not just about, finding a cure to what's happening, but already getting used to the new norm. And eventually when we see when we will be able to see each other again very soon when we have races again, right? So even before that, try and join us when we do our Zwift workouts. I've been posting a lot. Si Ben nga may live stream rin about his workouts. So we'll invite you one of these times to join the workouts. And of course, next week, don't forget to join us. We're gonna have another session, and this time, mukhang napag-usapan na namin ni Ben, we're gonna talk about indoor training and how to get started and what your options
All
are.
right. Okay. Good. Sige. Not bad for first first live session. Will
Yeah.
this live stream recording naman will be available for those people who fail to attend the live session tonight. Guys, if you still have any questions, just post it in the comment section. We'll try to address them in the next week's episode. So, guys, thank you so much for spending your Saturday evening with us. Stay home, stay safe, and we'll see you next week. All right? Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Nag-ano lang ako, nag-outro.